Who knows what evil lurks in the heart of games? The shadow knows. Okay, back with my third part for the home computer Let's Compare video series. Today I focus on how you can play your downloaded files that you find somewhere on the internet. I won't tell you where. You have to figure out that for yourself, but yeah, I show you a cheap and easy way for all 5 systems how you can play them back on the original hardware. And with cheap I mean less than 50 euro. Probably cheaper for the most systems, because for the most systems you can easily use the tape drive. It's not the most convenient solution, but it will work most of the times. And yeah, I'm just searching. So basically I recommend you to get a tape deck, a hi-fi tape deck, if you don't have one anymore. They should be reasonably cheap on eBay. You don't need a fancy auto reverse or something like that. The basic models with an manual gain control, that's important, manual gain control, with a reasonable display for that. The higher the resolution the display, the easier it is to get the correct volume for your recordings. And then you need a couple of tapes. Recommended are 60 minutes type 1 normal tapes, no chromium stuff. They might work, but not really in most cases. Or you get one of those cassette adapters. I'm not sure if I can recommend these, especially not for the Commodore 64, because the C64 will stop the cassette if it has found a file, and I think it stops for 5 seconds or so and continues, or you have to press the Commodore key and it continues directly. But yeah, you can edit 5 seconds of silence, or 6 or 7 seconds. I'm not sure how long the Commodore 64 pauses when it found a file. With Audacity, I really recommend you to get Audacity. Especially useful for the MSX, and I think it is the best program to play the files back if you connect the adapter cassette or the tape deck to your PC. It's free, open source, available for yeah, I think I know about it for Windows, which I'm running it on right here. I have Linux on the other machine, so it's available for Linux, and I think it's also available for the Macintosh. And it's free. It's not the most easy program to use, but I show you the most important things with it. Basically on the MSX at the end of this video. So yeah, for the Commodore 64, besides the tape solution, I use these real floppy disks. I have one connected to my Commodore 64, and I have another drive sitting on top of my computer you're looking at right now. And you need something like a Zoom floppy or an X1541, XA 1541 or XE 1541 cable connected to the parallel port of your older PC. The older the better for that. Works the best in plain DOS with a Norton Commander style program. that works really great, but yeah, I built myself a Zoom floppy clone, and yeah, you have to Google for Zoom floppy, or if you want to build one yourself, Zoom floppy with Teensy, Teensy. That's an Atmel development kit, pretty much something like the Arduino. So yeah, I've put the floppy in my disk drive. Let's see what's on it. And it should read something. And it should not take that long. Ah, there it is. Okay. It's quite slow. I don't do that very often, reading the directory. So yeah, you can see that that are the games that I used for the second part of this series. Those weird signs show up as lines on the regular Commodore 64. So I don't want to use those. Okay, so now if I want to transfer a file, I go to the correct directory. And next I want to do is Chucky Egg. It's probably my next Let's Compare video. And I want to transfer Chucky Egg, you have a D64 file, to the floppy disk inserted in the disk drive, and yeah, it says that it overwrites what's already on the floppy disk, and now I have to wait a couple of minutes. And probably it's that slow because I have quite a lot of programs open, and this computer only has 128 megs of memory, and that's quite a lot of programs opened right now for the, I think, minimum amount of reasonable memory for Windows 2000. That's one of the reasons why I didn't install XP on this machine. And since it's only basically for transferring data, so I wanted DOS on this, so I have a dual boot system with Windows 98. Yeah, it takes a while, but usually I copy, as you could see on the other disk, usually I copy a lot of games, as much as fit on one side, into my own D64 image, and I'll show you that later when I come to using tape. And yeah, so I only have to write one disk usually for 3 or 4 games. And usually it's faster, I think. Yeah, but I'm running an MXX emulator in the background, so maybe it speeds up if I close that. Yes, it does. Okay, that was slowing down the old Pentium 3. So I apologize for the long waiting. Usually it does it much faster. Yeah, it's pretty easy. If you really want to go with real floppy disk, if you have a working disk drive, a couple of blank floppy disks, it's basically the most compatible, because you have real hardware. And I have SpeedDOS installed, so it loads quite fast. There is a device called SD or MMC to IEC. So yeah, and that's the directory. Loaded much faster. And now I can put this floppy disk into my other disk drive that's connected to the Commodore 64 and load the game, just like I did back in the 80s. Yeah, and you can get an SD to IEC or MMC to IEC, which is sort of a floppy emulator. Basically, most games that have their own speed loader for multi-loading, and there are quite a few of floppy disk games that multi-load, won't work because it only simulates the standard transfer protocol and doesn't have the CPU that's in every floppy drive for the C64, but all single loaded files, and those are the ones that you can load from tape, will work. Quite a few others also will work. There are probably recracks or cracks that don't have a speed loader, but you have to look for them. Not every file you download will work. Those are quite cheap. You can get a 1542 Ultimate, which is really expensive, but I think it's the best solution. I don't have that money, and I have everything in real hardware, enough floppy disks and drives to last me for at least the next 10 years. Yeah, but the 1541 Ultimate is, I think it costs more than 150 euros, so it's really expensive. And now, okay, if you don't want to use the floppy disk drive, but want to use the tape method, you basically are interested in PRG files, but you usually get D64 or T64 files. And you can use a program called DIR-master, Directory Master. I have version 2.2, but I think there is a version 3.0 available right now. But it doesn't matter for that purpose, and you want to avoid those cracked versions that have a high score saver if you are using tape. They might work, but I ran into quite a few of problems with high score saved versions. They didn't work if there was no disk drive attached. It didn't matter if there was a disk drive attached and no disk inside, so it could report a read error, but they crashed if there wasn't a disk drive attached. So you can simply drag and drop it into the directory. It fucks up the file name a little bit, but doesn't really matter. You can rename it. Yeah, what I wanted to show you is, if you want to use the disk method. Ah, shit. The mouse is not the best. You create a new D64 image. You can also give it a name somehow. Yeah, rename disk, edit ID, so I can make it. That's my usual ID. Yeah, and you can drag and drop the files inside. You have this menu, separators. Yeah, you can insert those fancy lines, and if you drag and drop Donkey Kong into there, another line. So they are nicely separated. I think you get the point, and then save it and write it back to disk. No. Okay, now you have the PRG file. So now I can switch to this machine again. And now you need a program called, where is it? Retro Transfer. You need a program called WAV PRG, and choose Convert PRG POO or T64. Yeah, you really can use T64 files, but often there are more than one file inside, and it will only load the first file correctly, and you get a lot of useful garbage after that on your tape, which you probably won't use. Click OK. Yeah, you have two options. Fast is turbo tape. Stick to the normal value if you want it to be compatible with usually turbo tapes. I made a video about them. I think if you activate raw mode, it doesn't write the turbo tape loader, so it does write the turbo tape loader. You can use higher values than 263 to make it more reliable, but I found, strangely enough, I found real turbo tape quite reliable. Slow is the kernel loader. You don't want to use that, it's horribly slow. Select the machine. I only tried my PAL C64, so I'm not sure how it works. Yeah, and here you can choose if you want a tab file. I recommend making a tab file and try it out in an emulator like Vice. You can also choose a WAV file, that's what I usually do, or directly to the sound card, and you have some options. Invert waveform. If it doesn't work at all, try inverted waveform. You can try sine wave or square wave or triangle wave. I don't do it that way. I don't record it like that. I write tab files and write them back on a real Commodore 64 if I use cassettes, or if I use turbo tape. I create turbo tape files directly on my C64 and read the games from disk. Different approach, but this should work. I've tried it before. So you choose fast, default, don't use raw mode. The C64 that you have, PAL probably works the best because most of the games are in PAL format, and if you use an NTSC C64 you are screwed anyways. You want to output it to WAV file. If it doesn't work, try inverted waveform, try something different over here, try different recording volumes on the cassette, or try different volumes on the playback. Click OK, and it asks me where I put the file. I do it in here, retro. It's a Chucky Egg thingy. And he asks me for a wave file, Chucky, and voila, you have a wave file. It's here, chucky.wav. And now you can either record it to your on your cassette deck, to your real cassette, or you can play it back on your on any device you connect to this adapter cassette. As I said, I won't recommend it. That's how this file looks in Audacity, and I show you that because, hey, it can't be that short, or is it? Oh, it is. Chucky Egg is quite a short game on the C64, and let me show you here. This is probably the gap, or this is the gap. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Let's see. Yeah. This is the turbo tape loaded part, I think. So this is probably the turbo tape loader, and you probably have to insert silence at the first gap. So generate silence. I'm not sure how many seconds. Let's say it's 8 seconds. I don't think it really matters. And if you save that, you don't have to hold the Commodore key down if you don't if you use an adapter cassette. for the time the Commodore 64 waits when it says found and the file name of the file. Yeah, that's basically it. You can also run into tab files. Cancel, close this. For that you need a program called Audio Tab. So yeah, tab files are basically images of original copies of the tape. They include all the copy protections, are not cracked, and pretty much work like the real tapes back in the day on an emulator, and you can write those tape images back like to a real tape, pretty much like an ISO image from a CD, from a PlayStation CD or something like that. Yeah, if you click to sound, you have to connect the adapter cassette or the tape recorder directly to the PC and can record it. You can do it to a WAV file, and again, if it doesn't work at all, choose inverted waveform. I never used the advanced options. Yeah, volume is the volume of the wave, but I adjust the recording volume on my gain control on the tape, on the cassette deck or on the playback device, so never bothered with that. You can also create a tape file. Never did it with this program. I think I used other methods for that. Yeah, basically you got a tab file, use this or this. Yeah, was okay. You can same procedure as before with the other, and you create a WAV file and can play it back, record it to tape, or use the adapter. You can also insert these 8 seconds, or you have to try it out how many seconds it stops, of silence, so you don't have to rush for the Commodore key, but you can just wait. It takes 8 seconds or 10 seconds longer. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, that's how you use. You can transfer the files on the Commodore for the Commodore 64. I hope it's not too confusing. Now I show you how you can use transfer the files for the Atari. I already did a video how you can use the tape recorder. I link it down below, besides all the links to where you can get the programs I use in this video. And yeah, what did I want to say now? Yeah, the Atari. Don't use cassettes with Atari. It's horrible. It takes ages to load. 600 bits per second is the usual speed on the Atari. The default speed on the Commodore 64 with the kernel loader is 300 bits per second, but you can speed it up with turbo tape, I think, to about 2,500 bits per second with software. That's not possible on the Atari, so you're stuck with 600 bits per second. So, and yeah, I always recommend before you transfer for the first time, try it out in an emulator with the same setup as your real machine. Try to load the tape image, either the tape image you created. Most of the times you have the tape image file in some part of the process, or you can easily generate it, as with this program I showed you for the Commodore 64. And the bad thing with the Atari is sometimes the tape file you generate works perfectly fine in an emulator, but doesn't work on a real machine. And to get that, you wait 15 or 20 minutes, and you always think you've got the wrong volume or you did anything wrong, but no, you didn't. I don't know why, but it happened. So get the floppy emulator I show you right now. I bought this little device, SIO to SD, and that's a loader, by the way. I don't really understand how the loader works. The newest versions are only have a Polish manual, so if you like my videos and want to do me a great favor, and if you are from Poland and or you understand Polish and English, it would be really great if you would translate the manual for the loader program to English, not only for me but for all the users of this device. I'm pretty clueless about the Atari. It's really confusing. I know that you have to disable BASIC for most of the games, so you have to press Option while booting. And by the way, it's 32 megabyte, not gigabyte, and it's enough for really a lot of games. You have 5 buttons. I don't know if you can. Yes, you can. 5 buttons, and yeah, you can move around the files on the SD card with that, and select the files with those 5 buttons. I do that. You only have to well, you need an XEX file or an ATR file. XEX is an single file executable for the Atari, and ATR files are disk images. This device supports both of them. Yeah, simply put the files onto the SD card and make directories. It's really a pain to browse through 100 of files with that method, even with the loader program. And yeah, I've selected Green Beret with the buttons, with the 5, come on, with those 5 buttons. And the manual how those buttons work is in English, and also the manual how you have to prepare the SD card. I bought this basic device, basically the plain board, without the cable. I butchered my cassette drive to get the cable. Yeah, so I've chosen Green Beret, and if you boot, it starts with something like this, and I'm not sure what the keys do. I think one is with turbo, one is without the turbo. I try start and hope it works. Yes, it seems that it does work. I don't want the trainer. Yes, I had this problem before. Don't know if it will start at some point. It did the last time I recorded the video, but I remember this problem. So yeah, I can show you how to choose another file. And here you can't see the buttons and the display simultaneously. Oh yeah, let's see. The first button selects the disk drive, and you get a lot of those. I think the second last button, no, it's the select button. I did not want to do that. The last button is the shift button, so if you press shift and another button, you the second button is the browse button, and I could press shift with it and get the other direction if I hold the button down. Not the most comfortable way. Second last button to select, second button to browse, Demon Attack, you have to load a translator disk before. Dick Duck, why is there so many Dick Ducks? Donkey Kong. Use the second left button to select, and I'll reboot the system with holding down the option button, and I can't hold the camera while doing this. And you have to wait a couple of seconds before you restart the machine. Yeah, so I started the machine again, holding down the options button, and now I press start, and let's see if it works. Yes, it does work. And that's how quickly and how easily you can load a game on the Atari machines. And if you ever loaded a game from tape, you would really admit that's much more convenient. Okay, after the quite complicated Commodore 64 and Atari methods, and yeah, I think the only method for the Atari I really can recommend is a floppy emulator. It's reasonably cheap if you take the plain board and provide your own cable. So now let's have a look at the Amstrad and the Spectrum, and it's basically the same for both machines. I use the same program for both machines. It's called, let me see, Tape to WAV. Basically it's Tape to WAV. And if you install this, and I'm not sure what happens if I click there, I haven't installed a browser on this machine. I think it opens the browser and you can get this library. It supports the Spectrum TZX, the Amstrad CDT, the tab files for... I only ran into tab files for the Spectrum. I never ran into those files, but I did run into Z80 and SNA files on the Spectrums from time to time. And then drag and drop into there, wait a couple of seconds or minutes, and it should work. Yeah. You get the WAV file. I recorded to a real tape for the Amstrad. You can again use an adapter cassette, which I do for the Spectrum. And it's... do I have a spec key here? Yes, I do. Same with TZX files. You basically drag and drop them into the window and get the file that you can play back or record to tape, just as you please. You can also record it to a CD. I use a small MP3 player, or for the Spectrum I use my Raspberry Pi to play back the WAV files. You can also convert them to MP3, but it becomes less reliable with MP3s. At least I had that problem with the Amstrad. So yeah, if you have the memory, and flash memory is ridiculously cheap right now, so is hard disk memory, I recommend you to keep the WAV files. They are the most reliable. Okay, now we come to the MSX, and I had the most problems with the MSX. So basically, again, you have a lot of opportunities on the MSX, but you run into three types of files. You run into cartridge images, .rom. You run into disk images, I think they are .dsk. I'm not sure about that. Yes, DSK. And you run into cassette files. I think they are .cas. If you have a cassette file, you just have to convert it to a WAV file, and I show you that. But the most common are ROM or disk files. ROM files don't work on my MSX machines because of the built-in software. I could replicate this behavior in an emulator in Blue MSX if I well, there are only some MSX ROMs that are patched for working with the cassette interface, so they could load from tape, and the one for the hit bit isn't. But if I put the hit bit software ROM at the same positions on an MSX machine that was patched for tape use, it had the same behavior. It loads just as intended, and if it's loaded, the machine resets, and it should start the loaded ROM image. But on my machine and on the emulated machine, it started the built-in software, and I don't know how to disable it. So ROM images are pretty much out of my reach as long as I only have this machine. But I can use disk images, and I show you that, and I also show you how you can use the ROM images. But I can't really tell you if it works. It works on if I load the tape on an emulator on a different MSX machine than mine. So yeah, MSX. First of all, you have a disk file. I think I have it in here. Yes, I chose Green Beret, and it is linked to the program, but I have it in retro transfer. It's called the disk manager, and again I give you the link for it. Open, go to the directory, I have it in the CAS link, and open the disk. And for some reason the program accesses because it's already accessed by another process. Let me guess, I already opened it. Yeah, that's what's on the disk. So right now you need only the binary files. This is the 32K game. So you get two files with about 16K each. And now you can basically close this. I also close that. And yeah, right now you have to go to an emulator. I have installed Blue MSX. I found it quite useful. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it doesn't really matter because I only need to use the basic. I chose an MSX2 machine with 2 disk drives, just because it's more comfortable. And I don't think it runs quite fast. So disk drive B. I have to create a new disk image, not in my documents. My computer, 2K, retro, MSX. And I call it, let's say, transfer.dsk, because I have to modify a file from the original, and now I have to format the disk. Okay, I found out how it works, but only in drive A. And it's not the most obscure command. Yes, okay. Oh, come on, it doesn't really matter. I strike a key. Or should I strike the A key? So, eject the disk again. Insert the disk again. Insert the Green Beret disk into drive A. and I have to load the load dot bus, the basic file. What did I do wrong? G. Yes. And it's Microsoft Basic. You have a full screen editor. Okay. And you get something like this. And you have to edit this file to make it load from cassette. Right now it's made to load from disk, but I save it as an ASCII file, so save. I save it on drive B, G beret dot bus, and import bus F, great keyboard. And that's important, comma A, so you don't get a tokenized basic version, but a plain ASCII file. And yes, now I can close the emulator. Open this disk manager again. Now I have this gberet.bus, and I also want it in this directory, so I drag and drop it. Yes, and now we have to edit it. So open with. Where's the notepad? Where's the notepad? And I always use notepad for this, so that's okay. Let me get a bigger font so you can read it better. Yeah, as you can see, it's the same as before. I have to replace the poke command. Yeah. And since I don't want to type this in every time, it's always the same, I just copy it. And we have to replace this simply with CAS colon, yes, colon, same here. And that's your new gberet.bus for loading from tape. So you can close it, save it. That's where I got my poke from. And now you have to open the command line. That's the program that converts the binary files and the basic loader we extracted from the disk or created. So it's a multi-load file, so I have to use a /m. And if you use only a single binary file, you can you don't have to use the loader sometimes, so you can just use /f. And I think if you with ROM files it's the same. You just use .rom files. I think they can be as big as 32K. So all cartridges up to the size of 32K will work with this. Just use them over here. So now we basically have to choose the files we had before. So it's gberet.bus space gberet1.bin gberet 2.bin, press enter. Okay, it didn't work because of the same fucking library that made Directory Master not work on Win2K. Thank you, Microsoft, for making it incompatible with Windows 2000. So yeah, I have to type the shit again, because I'm again with remote access on the other machine. So G. Okay, I had a typo in my command line, so I have to go through this again. Again, 1200 baud, a 16-bit stereo file. This really doesn't matter, so I choose 1, and no, and now it works. And no, I don't want to play it back. And in theory you can try it out. This file should work when you play it back on an MSX machine. You by the way, you just need a simple adapter, a 5-pin DIN plug connected to a 3.5mm jack from to plug it into the sound card, CD player, MP3 player, or whatever you want to plug it in. Very simple cable. I've soldered it myself. It's really not rocket science. You can find a pinout for that if you Google for it. Very simple. And I think you can also use a standard cable that you can buy for to connect an MSX to the tape recorder. I think it should work. So yeah, this doesn't work for me, so I have to make it work. So let's see if this program runs on that machine here. Let's copy the WAV file over there. Yeah, slow machine. I think it's an 700 or 800 megahertz Pentium 3, but it really doesn't matter. Program you use for that is not here. Okay, let's close that. Okay, the CAS tools. Yeah, you need CAS tools. I link to that. There's a very simple user interface for that. You see, very simple, with very simple instructions. Drag file here. I will do that. It's a G-Beret. And what happens now? Ah, okay. I have to phase shift the signal. No matter which phase shifting I choose in the CAS-link file. And basically that's it. I should get a CAS file from that. Which probably takes a while on this slow machine. And there we are, 34K, sounds reasonable, yeah. And then I do this, select 2400 baud, so it loads faster, and I create another WAV file from it. May sound stupid, but that's the only way it works for me. But we're not finished yet. So yeah, that's it. I can close that. We have this WAV file. Then I have to open it with Audacity. because I played back on an MP3 player, and as you can see it's 43.2 kilohertz sample frequency, which is, I don't know why, so I have to resample the track with standard CD sample frequency. This is much faster on a more powerful machine. I have to set the project rate to 44.1 kilohertz CD, and since my crappy MP3 player fades out at the end of the track, I have to generate a couple of seconds of silence at the end. Then export, not into this directory, no, not into this directory. Yeah, this again takes a while. And this file I created right now will actually load. That's the way how I generate my MSX files. Yeah, you basically have to extract all the binary files, rewrite the loader file so that everything that loads from disk replace everything after every load command with the cas command. Leave everything else. Make sure the files are in the correct order on the tape when you convert them with caslink. You can try out the WAV file caslinks generated. That's the method, the way I have to do to make them load. Basically, everything after the caslink is the same if you use ROM files. And you can start those programs, I show you in emulator. No, because I already exported it. Let's start Blue MSX again. Program Blue MSX. And I don't know how well the emulation works on this machine. So machine editor, I choose my. This is a profile I made myself. It's the standard MSX, and I removed the floppy ROM. That gave me some problems. So I insert the cas file, and you usually start it with run cas colon and it should work. Yes, it does work. No sound because I've connected it to my tape recorder, and I think, does it still load? Come on. The keyboard or joystick with shift. Yeah, as you can see, it loaded from tape, and that's the way I do it. So yeah, I will do a fourth part with a verdict. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful and not too confusing. It's really hard to explain how it works. Pretty easy for the Spectrum and the Amstrad. Pretty easy if you get the floppy emulator for the Atari. Pretty easy with the Zoom floppy for the Commodore 64. The tape loading is pretty unreliable, especially if you record it on a tape deck. I didn't have those problems with the Spectrum or the Amstrad, but the Commodore 64 seems to be more special with that. Tape is really unusable on the Atari, and you miss quite a few games on the MSX if you only have a tape, but I'm not sure Best would be to get a cartridge emulator, but those are quite expensive. Yeah, again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in part 4 with the verdict, which of those virtual systems to buy. Yeah, thanks for watching.